Hello, hello. Welcome to the 20th anniversary celebration for beloved independent press Black Ocean. With us today are poetry editor Carrie Olivia Adams and longtime Black Ocean authors Joe Hall and Nate Hoks. Got that right? They will each do a brief reading from their new books, and then we'll follow it up with discussion about the past, present, and future of the press. So I'm just going to read their bios just to give you a little bit of a better sense of who they are and what they do, and then we will get started with the reading portion of the event. We'll hear some new poems from them, and then we'll discuss. Carrie Olivia Adams lives in Chicago, where she is the executive editor for the nonprofit Press Black Ocean and the promotions and marketing communications director for the University of Chicago Press. Her books include the Book of Marys and Glaciers, Be the Thing of Memory, Operating Theater, 41 Jane Does, and Intervening Absence, in addition to the chapbooks Proficiency Badges, Grapple, Overture in the Key of F, and A Useless Window. She writes the Poetry and Biscuits newsletter on Substack and curates a house reading series by the same name. When she's not making poems, she's making biscuits. This should be very welcomed here in the South. We know something about that. All right, Joe Hall was first taught poetry by Lucille Clifton and Decades of Bad Jobs. He is a writer and educator in Buffalo, where he spends the summers in the dirt. He is the author of several other books, including People Finder Buffalo, Pigafetta is My Wife, Someone's Utopia, The Devotional Poems, and Fugue and Strike, the latter four also published by Black Ocean. Nate Hoks is the author of The Narrow Circle, Reveilles, Nests in Air, and Moony Days of Being, of which the last two are from Black Ocean. He has also published translations of work by Vicente Huidobro, Henry Michaud, and Christian Dotremont. He teaches at the University of Chicago and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So please give a big New Orleans welcome to these wonderful poets.
All right, thank you all for coming. I am Carrie Olivia Adams, and I'm the executive editor of Black Ocean, and we are very excited to be celebrating our 20th year in publishing. So I'm going to read from my new book, which is published by Tupelo, the Book of Marys and Glaciers. It is composed of 3 long sequences of poems, so I'm going to read to you from the title sequence from the Book of Marys and Glaciers. I went all the way to the museum, and then another museum, and then another, to discover the same thing around the world. Mary is never alone. There she is with a baby. There she is with so many angels, wise men, a dying sun. Mary is always host, her body too. The ocean knows no age but the sand that is our raw inheritance, and Mary's inheritance is generations of purity. Our Lady of no choice, Our Lady of our sorrows, Our Lady who never knows solitude, never knows silence, our voices always in her ears, the company of angels always a bit too much. To be adored is to be surrounded. When she comes to me, I am always alone. A woman alone is entirely herself. A woman alone leaves excess in her wake, every portion too big. In the company of others, she takes up no space, but alone, she is the space. Alone, she watches the dogs of the city off leash. She runs toward a foreign language. No longer surrounded by men, she is not mother, not sister, not womb, not prayers to the fruit of. She is just a woman in blue with a tall glass of wine in a walled city, enjoying its pigeons. I was a girl who gilded in the margins wore the face of the past. When I was a child, I misheard hail as hell. Say your Hail Marys. The hellish din, the noise of all the demands of the repentant, the praying of prayer. Within the catacombs, they claim an image of the first Mary, as though there was no other Mary before. No other whose pulse was motherhood, whose sorrow was a helplessness. Mary's life begins at conception and ends at resurrection, and mine begins with pity. To give pity is to give opportunity. Another word for begging, for the afterlife or half-life of want. The mother of Mary, a virgin. The mother of virgin, the machine makes Marys. We could be made from trees, born of ideas or metamorphosis, transubstantiated in a drop of water, a slow-moving block of ice, birth pains and death pains, metal city forests and their copper glow, knitting, unrolling a ball of string, the womb and cords. We come to bury in the afterbirth, the after death, collecting blood from the side, lancing the tumor of ego, pushing our fingers through the rotten wood, alone with age, alone with our thoughts, stormwater, and Mary quite contrary. You may not know this about me, but I was a very important woman. The supernatural bride problem, the merry-go-round, wind farm, server farm, all of us mining the bite. Mary speaks 6 times in the Bible, each one barely a sentence. Among her quotes, "They have no wine." The Book of Mary's Repose and the dream of the underground tunnel system in the backyard. At the end, my father always with a glass of water. We'd be the first pilgrims who would see the days alone in the shadows. It's quiet in the blue conflict, say dark. The drone of masonry, brick, the dust of insulation, our coverage, our shelter, the paragraph of frustration ringing the lip as you coo. Prohibit the jackhammer, the tree, the raging gas of the neighbor's blower, the kin of leaves and dirt, the big sword mouth of life. Consume the kit, the zoo, the menagerie of our collective stubbed toes. Cover yourself for the trip. I wanted to write about Mary, but then I became distracted by the glaciers, the things that glaciers do. The angels too loud, too surveillant, the glaciers always alone, even when we were so close, reaching our hands off the bow to scoop the ice. They were at a remove, unable to be fathomed, austere and foreboding and vulnerable and slowly calving with a roar or a sigh. The weight of it all, the abuse of it all. I made myself tall enough to get in the frame with the glacier. On my toes, I was here. I came to watch the earth crumble and slowly slide against itself. This is work, this labor, the cracks of something so large it can only break. Change agent, role assignment. Mary doesn't know what these words mean, nor do I, sitting still in the concrete shell waiting for the roar of a storm. I am not a mother, but I'm old enough to be. Something I am acutely aware of every time I see a young man and call him kid. Get in there, kid. I might say to boymen who well out-earn me. In the Quran, immediately after being born, the baby Jesus speaks to Mary to reassure her. Does Mary then call him child? Hey kid, I got this. Full-mouthed at the moment of birth. Imagine him. Enough language to make the world all over again, one glacier at a time. We're breathing in the distance, the fires of history, Hell come to earth and makes itself so at home some days. A pregnant Mary in the desert, throat choked with thirst and fear, alone and never so alone. The celestial surveillance, a being bound by her own umbilical cord. What's the difference between a tether and a leash? My sadness has me by the collar again, dragging me from room to room. The intrusive thought of wanting to be made new, unmade, dismantled, remade. The ice built and slowly cleaved, the heartbeat of the wound. Stigmatized Mary, bled out on the bus, the city, my white pants. My body is a hive. I've been trying to itch my way out of the shell. I watch the cat in envy of that pink tongue making something new. I am too old to feel this lost. Failure is not the privilege of youth, but hope is. The cat too shows his age, but he has the confidence I lost. He is a creature to be appeased, my bloody finger appeasement, the eccentric bird of my endangered rally. I let myself be pecked in the yard, an offering for pigeons or robins or the small yellow aphids that came to claim the last patch of green. Alone, but not alone. The man strewn in the subway station whose bare foot became an obstacle for commuters to step over. Our misery is ours and everyone's. Our failures our own and yet shared. I failed you, I failed them. I am not alone with these. Unlike the cat, I gave them my belly and watched as they sliced. What I had the guts for until I don't. A cipher, siphoned. I don't want to tell anyone all about me. Mary keeps her silences, even if no one else does. To be never alone, to be always in consort, in conversation, in abeyance, the surveillance of the hand of God, of the red receipt, the womb and its emissaries. We're in a lineup. Bring out your divine dead. Bring out your recoil. Thank you.
That was great. I'm really so glad to be on Black Ocean. And I'm looking forward to talking about it with you all. I'm going to read one poem, from my most recent book, Buffalo Free Rapid Transit. It's the final poem in the book, and it's kind of a quieter poem, which I thought I'd read since we got a good mic here. The seed of it is from a braid of fire. I was driving on the Skyway, the elevated highway over Buffalo, during the summer where the wildfires in Ontario were kind of clouding the sky. And I looked down from the Skyway and just saw a house, burning really hard, and the smoke spiraling up and joining, the smoke from Ontario, creating this kind of horrible, negative commons or community. And it was kind of the last disaster in a string of unnatural disasters that had kind of hit my city. So that is going to make an appearance. And the poem is dedicated to Laura Jaramillo, whose work I really admire. So it's called Breath Gradients, Block by Block. And I ride. What do I ride? I fall back dreaming, J and C, of being able, intravenous snow, uncapillaried whosoever, to choose to live an easy walk from you. But all the money flushes, nowhere through there, touching the bus, the snow, the place you cannot go. I love and fuck and hate in Buffalo. That is not Buffalo. Though, for a moment, when we're at Fitz's, or rolling dice as Jay leans against Violet's flank, it seems we might. If the room were a mask of petals, our pleasure turned inside out. Overdosed and on political fire, a snowplow foundering faced with this rate of accumulation could be knowing almost most kids suffer from lack and love. Every sound of them playing on the street which love does nothing but pebble the screen before the blades sweat. I used to like seeing people at the park at the foot of Ferry smoke and watch the river change and not. Now I am that person, guarding a rainless June on the skyway, tracing a black geyser of smoke down. A home burns to join the drift of Canada burning, minus one shelter. Where are you? Waking under the 198 pylons, thaumatropic graffiti, Skajakwata Creek's drought-bare banks. Who makes atmospheres to throttle ease from public being below the combustion? Sea brings a hacking stray in for a chest x-ray. Pylon says, armed trans people. Yeah. I'm not looking for you. A ripple in a small, sweaty room. Smoke pours into rivers. The watershed of drywall, asphalt shingles, palm print of homes over this home-bare city, into the river, the empire of time, and dialectics of the mask. Each pulls a flexible length of silver from the inner hank of their thigh, arranges those lengths into a transit map, connecting each node in which they gave, received care. Red blob on the AQ map, whole burning provinces, enormous suppurating sore. The smoke river empties into Lake Ontario. The bottle woman, the male person, Jay, still out there. The weak, rent checks flock, rainless, bright. And I wake in a sling, hefting my nugget to the burning chandeliers of our water supply. If care travels, how will we count it? Webs of getting by, trains carrying old joy, distros of filters. Where are you? Opening the clasp of what we've made to remake and die in the sanctum of that, which could be life-strewn streets? Or was it a car, frozen by the blizzard, half blocked from your house, the night the city, as a capacitor of care, died? And out on G's acre, we still our dice, are dreaming, to be with the wood, thrushes, flute, snow, cops, rain of smoke. I always think the next horrible season, walking grant, rows and rows of loans, not killed but smashed. 2020 to where cops did what they knew they'd lie about later. You remember with supreme resolution. They were on a car hood heckling snipers perched on the roof of the jail. And that was the truth in Niagara Square. Not anything won yet except an amplification and increase in the speed and the crashing. How to get out of perpetual reconstruction of this crime scene. Meech, Guggenot, India Cummings, so many more lives. Rain at last. Jay and C and I peel our greens into trash bags a little fast. Our tempos try to forget debt's discipline. Trash bags of green pile against the fence, vine resplendent, heavy, jeweled worlds. How do you write about the massacre, P asks, without turning what should be political into art? The blizzard, 41 dead, reported in the fires of June. I want to have a kid, C says. In this transit of harm, of care, in the fire, flood, the riots of cops, scattered gardens, factory-fed dirt, among these lead webs and water, scattered glitching fragments. Is this a cemetery or a park? A stairway to an elevated track. So many cities smashed, tumbling along Buffalo Street. Almost there. We take a walk. Ask, again, what's a city? C and J, with food-heavy bags of backhoe sent by City Hall to tear down 26 Garner, gave the man nowhere to go fast. A city is a holy place, desecrated by need. Buffalo is a holy place, desecrated by need. We take a walk. We are always walking in a small, poor city, in several small, poor cities, grinding against a friend's house, perhaps, if it's still there, in the right timeline, or even knowing scrambled, enormous, relentless machine, almost there. She looks up, surprised, darts from my hand, in this empire's 3rd century of life. All right, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Nate. Just want to start with gratitudes. Thank you. It's great to see familiar faces. I have so much gratitude to be on Black Ocean, to be published by Black Ocean. I feel supported. It's amazing. And gratitude for air conditioning right now. It's really comfortable here. I'm just going to read entirely from the book. I'm holding it as a prop because I'm too old to see. So I have to use my teleprompter here. All right. First poem is called Icebreaker Poem. It's kind of modeled off of the two truths and a lie, or 2 lies and a truth. I can't remember how the icebreaker actually goes. But anyway, it's dedicated to my students who I make play these stupid icebreaker games. All right, Icebreaker Poem. My favorite succulent is Leopold. I keep it on the shelf with self-help books. I have 3 brothers and I love them. All we do is watch figure skating. My least favorite meal is brunch. I always wanted to be a nurse. My mom is a musician who practices martial arts. My mom has lived for 3 decades in the Bay Area. My mom has to move because they raised the rent. Once I ate a salad with Bernie Sanders. I lost my luggage in Costa Rica. I lost my virginity in Santa Fe. I lost my mind in a black backpack of bent thumbtacks. My best friend is a potato. I learned to French kiss by practicing on spuds. I was born without a mother tongue. I was born without genitalia. I was born with an innate love of speed. Sometimes I have trouble connecting the dots. My uncle was a Polish anarchist who taught me how to skateboard in an empty swimming pool during the last drought. I hit my head when I crashed, and now each moment feels disconnected from the last. I would forget who I am if not for my tattoos. My tattoos are portraits of my favorite poets. My tattoos are flowers that bloom in the desert. My tattoos are portraits of my 3 dogs. On my thigh is the spaniel named Hank, who was hit by a mail truck. Miraculously, he survived. Morning poem. Wearing the cable knit sweater, I add sweetener to my coffee and stir until I'm hypnotized by the spoon's circles. Yes, I am this stupid. When a big idea tries to attach itself to my brain, my heart turns into a funnel. I pour down all the concepts that amble about like preteens dancing in a stuffy gymnasium. I pour down the barley and the malt, pour down the coffee grounds, pour down the creeping flocks and fake mustache. I pour down the songbirds and the soda water and the memory of falling off the porch and breaking my elbow. I pour down John Keats and moldy applesauce nightmares, and the gurgling heart spits them back up with a yellow Post-it note that says, "Congratulations, asshole, you've detached yourself from life 78% of the way. The hard part is still to come. So, do you want another shot at decoding the echoes of the rattling pebbles? Or would you rather sit there letting the faucet run until it starts to snow?" Poem for Wendy's Eyes. Last week, as I was eating an apple pie with my bare hands all by myself in a small room painted lime green and lit by a dim chandelier which hung from a white ceiling that sparkled, I thought of Wendy's green eyes, which made Wendy's eyelashes look green, which reminded me of the ocean, which was spitting up so many jigsaw pieces, sea glass, empty shells, old wigs, dead fish, elongated squid, folded jellyfish, all the junk of friendship, the bracelets and twigs. And then Wendy closed her eyes. Nothing lasts forever. Not Wendy, not apple pie, not the crappy light bulbs in the dusty chandelier, not the pain as one awakens in an empty room. So cheer up. Even the nurse won't ignore your screams all night. When the acid bubbles out of the battery, it looks like syrup, but I resist the urge to lick it, and instead watch the flaccid plastic bag that drifts like a winged creature or a leaky brain hyperactively dreaming of Wendy. Look how it comforts the bulldozer while the thunder bumbles its way around the arid interior. Self-portrait as ejecta. I stand in my neon green polyester shirt and without goggles or fog cover, look up at the sun as if to spit straight from my eyes the oily and gritty bits of me back to that smug, savage fire. I am as afraid to die as anyone else here on this caravan, on this picnic, in this cage, on this bike, in this canvas sack, under this porch, at this bus stop, on this refugee raft, in this cove, on this beach, with shiny black pebbles in my mouth. I spit one into my hand and hold it out to my son because he reminds me of myself, ages 4 through 8, and please, I'd like a do-over. I expected I'd turn blue before 40. I'd expected I'd see azaleas sprout from my thumb, expected to sprout a secret language of the desert and split the passage of time with the crow's wing that swipes at the gurgling stream. Once more, I turn myself inside out. Once more, I lose the tracks in the mud. And when the hoodie opens its arms, I wipe off my hands and get inside. Belcher's Ode. This poem's kind of a poetics of the burp poem. It starts with an epigraph from Walt Whitman. The sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind. I think that's from Song of Myself. Okay, Belcher's Ode. Every sentence is a chance to expel the burp that has built up since breakfast. Every sentence is a chance to silence the neighbor's bass drum and to punt a purple cabbage into the mayor's picture window. A chance to oil the pistons and press your personality into a dot, which is a kind of period that makes the reader pause so the pressurized landscape holds its breath as the text hisses. Every sentence is chance compressed. You can organize it into 6 groups, each at war for more gastro-poetic territory and for more members to keep filling their balloons with air from the burning pile of leaves next to the rusty swing set in the backyard where you played as a boy before your stomach became a battleground, before the semiotics of gas attacked the enzymes of your socio-political identities, before you could envision your very last sentence, your death poem, how it will expel itself, how its grammar will relax and sag, frothing a dimmer shimmer, a thinner haze, sheer enough to reveal clearly the boy child as he carves crooked daylilies into the bench. He ignores your instructions to please put down the knife. He is dreaming of a radioactive frog. And when the mist finally dallies down the hill, he asks you if you're empty yet, and if so, why, pray tell, are you screaming into a paper bag? All right, this will be my last poem. This is Ode on Dust. We're talking about the dust storm in Chicago. Just at lunch, last spring there was an awful dust storm. It was apocalyptic, like a big cloud coming to the city. Anyways, I wrote this long before that. Maybe it was linked causally, I hope not. Ode on Dust. The dust on my tongue does not make me thirsty, does not lead to unquenchable despair, does not spur insight or ecstasy or revelation. I hold a speck out to my daughter, who holds it up to the light, but a cloud covers the sun, and a smoke ring crowns the top of the pine tree. When the phone rings, I cover my ears, pull down my cap, pour hot sand into my briefcase, and step through the glass door, which is blue and smudged and held open by the boy who reminds me of a small bird, a sparrow or wren, a body of song that does not stay still, body that bathes in dust, that scatters the dust, body that flies through the cloud of dust, which hides a sunrise, which warms the fields and lights up the city, where a doctor wakes early and drinks her coffee until a cool mist spreads evenly through her mind. For one more day, she is not dust. Thank you.
All right, thank you again to all of our readers. So I just want to start off by asking you, Carrie, I think this is most intuitive to come first, just talking a little bit maybe about how Black Ocean was founded, how it became a nonprofit, and just sort of reflecting on the journey so far in the past 20 years, how it's grown, what's changed over that time.
Thank you, Dylan. I'm still kind of in disbelief that we've been around for 20 years. Like, how is that possible? Am I old enough for that to be possible? We co-founded, Jonica, Stuckey, and I, Black Ocean, after meeting in graduate school. We were both at the Vermont College of Fine Arts, and we actually met in a workshop that was run by Mary Ruffel and Ralph Angel. And we started talking in it was a low residency program, and so low residencies are great because they're kind of like summer camp. You have like 10-day bursts with people, and so you bond really quickly, and you just have all of these kind of wonderful conversations outside of the workshop time. And Jonica and I immediately just started talking about this sort of desire to start a publishing company. I had already been working in publishing at that point. My background is in academic publishing. I was at the University of Georgia Press before I was at the University of Chicago Press. And Jonica came from a very we both had this sort of Gen X DIY aesthetic, kind of making that sort of zine culture and things like that. And that time there was still, I felt like a lot of opening for small presses. There weren't that many kind of out there at the time. There was Verse, which became Wave, there was Slope. There really weren't that many. And we just kind of saw this real need. And it was kind of this graduate school pipe dream. We're sitting around, wouldn't it be great if we had a little publishing space and we could publish the kind of work that we think is interesting? And after we graduated, Jonica had the courage to figure out, I think financially I can make this work. And he took out a loan, but also was running these monster movie festivals, and he was a undertaker at the time he went into graduate school, and so was doing these sort of gothic death-themed burlesque shows. So our original books were kind of funded by these burlesque shows and this monster movie festivals. So Jonica had the vision to figure out how to make it work, and I had the actual experience in publishing where I'm I kind of think I know how it works and kind of the workflow. And so we kind of just put it together. And at the beginning, we were only doing a couple books a year. Now we're up to around 8, which is about all that 2 people can do who also have other lives and jobs. And that was part of why we became a nonprofit. We became a nonprofit about 18 months ago. And it's really with an eye towards making the press sustainable for the long run. We've made it these 20 years as a labor of love. That's great, but how do we actually grow it further or kind of sustain it and make it so that, when Jonica and I eventually decide to step away from publishing, not that we plan to do that anytime soon, there would be a kind of a press for someone else to step into and kind of continue that legacy. We've watched lots of other small presses, go collapse during the last 20 years. It's inevitable in this kind of business that is a business, but not always really a business. And but trying to, the legacy of Black Ocean is very important to us. We have always been part of the vision of it, and I think both Joe and Nate are part of that, is we always wanted to be able to offer a returning home to authors. There still aren't a lot of small presses that kind of always are open to new books by their existing authors. I feel like it's often a real challenge as a sort of mid-career poet to find a place to place your book, because there are lots and lots of contests for first or second books, but not so much, and you also feel like you've published a couple books at this point. Do I really want to be part of that sort of contest racket? And so I like to think that part of the idea of Black Ocean was sort of building this home so that authors feel like they always have someone who wants to consider and support their work. And so that if there's a new book by Joe Hall, it's probably from Black Ocean, and kind of building that sort of connection and that relationship is part of the vision and part of what we want to continue with Black Ocean going forward.
Excellent. Sticking with that kind of returning home theme, I do want to hear from Joe and Nate about that a little bit, and maybe as well if you have kind of I had this written down, kind of a meet cute story. If you remember how you first got in touch with Black Ocean or got exposed to them, I'd be curious about that as well. But as someone who personally has never published more than once on a single indie press, I definitely see what you mean by that, and I want to know what that's been like for you both, and what you found special and beneficial and rewarding about that. But I would also be curious if you can disclose it. Maybe this is too bureaucratic, but to ask just whether there are any actual book contract details that facilitate that multiple authorship that you both have, or whether that's more sort of an organic relationship that's built with the publisher after the fact.
Okay, so yeah, I'll do this. First I'll talk about what it's allowed, and then maybe the meet cute. I think, like a lot of presses treat young authors like a blood boy, where it's like, we're gonna vampirize this youth and all the energy this person has, and then cast them aside for the new blood boy, to keep our enterprise going and accumulating social capital. But so I've been really joyful and happy that Black Ocean has gotten behind the authors, and in terms of what it's done, I think it's very real. We all like to think that our writing comes from us and that it is absolutely informed by our own sort of integrity and vision. But the fact that we are operating within a writing market, even subconsciously, has to shape our work, at least to a certain degree. And I didn't know if Black Ocean was going to take, you know, my second book, and when they did, I was so like startled that, you know, I began to be able to think about what I was writing as a book, right? Like not as a series of poems. And so to be able to compose at that level has been really nice, and it's really consonant with how I think in my practice. And so there's that, and then the other thing it's allowed me to do is just take, I think, more risks. You know, like I wrote a book that was like, I don't know, throw trash at cops, and you know, did a lot of historical research that informed it as well, and it was really different than the other stuff I wrote, and I don't, you know, it was a strange hybrid project, so I don't know who would have published it otherwise, right? I really don't. And that book was really successful in the sense that, like, I know that like union organizers have given that book to other, like on the shop floor, right? And not at a university, right? So that kind of latitude has allowed me to do things I didn't think I would be able to do otherwise, right? Or which I would have done, but maybe lost heart. So I think that's really meaningful, and I actually think there is a politics to sticking with authors, or a potential one, maybe a proto one. And then I'll just give you really quickly the meet cute. Well, first of all, I reviewed Carrie's book. I had a friend, Wade, who was like, "Oh, you want to review some books for this literary magazine, Phoebe?" And so I reviewed Carrie's chapbook. And then at an I think it was an AWP book fair, I was just talking to the other editor, Jonica, and he was like, "Oh man, we had this great release party," and I was like, "How'd it go?" And he's like, "Someone shit on the porch." And I was like, "It sounds good, I guess." But that stuck in my head, and then when I had a book, I was like, "I'm going to send it to this guy, and I'm going to send it to Carrie as well, because I like Carrie's work." So that's it.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add except to echo some of the similar sentiments. I'll start with kind of the first, like, it's not really meet cute, but the first time Black Ocean came onto my radar, it was a long time ago, almost 20 years ago, and it was, as many of you probably know, Jack Schomburg's first book, The Man Suit. And I just remember a mentor kind of showing it to me, and my eyes kind of like leaped out of my skull. I was just so like in love with that book, and felt at that time like, wow, this must be the coolest press ever to have walked the planet. And so just because of that, like as such an early, that made such an early impression on me, it's part of why I feel so grateful. But yeah, and what Carrie was saying about this sort of like bouncing around that is so common for poets to do and have to do, like definitely my first two books were on different presses, and there's always this kind of just anxiety about what to do with the next one. So it means a lot to have a couple titles out. So.
All right, well, I know I have, I want to take it back to Carrie, just to ask you about the different types of publishing that you're involved in, and also your own work as a writer, whether you would like to talk a little bit about how you wear those different hats. So you're involved in both academic publishing, and then this sort of more, you characterize it as sort of DIY type of thing. Even before you started Black Ocean. So I'm wondering how you sort of balance those and what you see as the relationship, whether there's been sort of a cross-pollination in a way, or whether you've taken certain lessons from one to the other.
It's, I feel like I've lived on almost every side of the book, except I don't do production and design. That's Jonica's world. But it is, it all has contributed in different ways. So I originally, was certainly kind of making homemade chapbooks and all of that sort of thing back in the pre-graduate school sort of days. But once I started in academic publishing, I actually, I think everybody starts in publishing thinking they want to be an editor. And that being an editor is great. I appreciate my role here at Black Ocean. But when I started in academic publishing, I actually realized the editors weren't having any fun. they were kind of uptight. And the marketing was actually a place where no one in academic publishing who's working in marketing actually comes from a marketing or a business standpoint. They're all coming from backgrounds as sort of English and literature majors, other sort of humanities. And it turns out that marketing and publishing is incredibly a creative space. It's actually where you get to do a lot of writing. I'm doing kind of marketing writing, kind of pitch letters. I'm also building relationships with media and book reviewers and things like that. And that kind of gave me a great foundation when we were starting Black Ocean. I'm kind of thinking about creatively, how are we going to actually get the name of the small press out there? How are we going to grow it? How can I use the connections that I have in my academic publishing world to kind of help Black Ocean along? I travel for my day job. I go to New York twice a year, and I meet with book review editors and other sorts of media contacts. And at this point, they know me in both roles, and it's kind of fun. I start out and pitch the Chicago books that I'm being paid to pitch, and then I get to talk about Black Ocean books as part of all of that. And so it's been nice to kind of fold those worlds together and to find ways for them to inform each other. And then it also feeds back into my own writing. I'm kind of a list maker, and a lot of my own poems kind of come out of sort of little fragments that I kind of gather and kind of architecturally put together. And so it's always funny to me when I'm reading something and I realize that this line is something that someone said in a meeting when I was very bored or something like that. And so I find that, or they came out of an editorial committee packet that I was reading. And so I find that it all kind of, I try to make every moment somehow fruitful or productive and kind of come back into this sort of artistic practice. Even when I'm editing someone else's book, kind of thinking about it with that same sort of creative brain and sort of with the eye towards how the reader's going to read those poems and all those sorts of things. I kind of try to make sure that they're all connected. While I wear many hats, I kind of think that they're all on at the same time.
Interesting, yeah, that lack of compartmentalization is really interesting to me. So we don't have a lot of time left now that I've checked the time, but I want to just end with this question since it's kind of more for everyone, or could be for everyone. If you want to take it that way, it's okay if not everybody answers it. But since you mentioned when you first founded Black Ocean that it was really like a place to celebrate and platform like the kind of work that you like the most and were interested in, I wondered if, just for anyone in this room who might be interested in being published by Black Ocean in the future, whether you could kind of describe what type of work you generally look for, what strikes your fancy the most, or anything that has kind of, you think sets Black Ocean apart maybe a little bit from other indie publishers, or what's your unique aesthetic on Black Ocean? Describe that a little bit. And I'm curious whether the authors here, Nate and Joe, could maybe talk a little bit about what they feel, how they feel their books fit into that aesthetic. Like if you're multiply published with Black Ocean, there must be like a continued kinship of aesthetic here that keeps going throughout your work.
I always feel like you need to know both Jonica and myself to kind of understand Black Ocean's aesthetic, in the sense that our books are kind of always about trying to find the space in the Venn diagram between our two tastes. And I think that once you know that, it all like makes sense in this sort of like, you know it when you see it, that's a Black Ocean book. But I think that both Jonica and I share a similar interest in things that certainly take risks, but also are about kind of making you look at things in a new light, in a new perspective. And I think, we're all working with the same material. Certainly at this point, nothing feels new in the world. We're all kind of like weird large language models where we're just like filtering everything we're receiving and trying to make something creative out of it. And I think there's a space where I want poetry to kind of give me goosebumps. Like I just want it to make me see something that is maybe everyday, maybe very domestic, maybe maybe I've overlooked it, but all of a sudden it looks strange and interesting and new to me. And it's all about that sort of, there's, I think there's verbal similarities and like craft similarities across some of our books, but I think it's really about the sort of perspective shift. And sometimes these are really quiet poems, sometimes they're really loud poems. I feel like our aesthetic is diverse in how it approaches this, but it's more about a sort of mindset of how you are probing the world around you.
That sums it up well for me. I mean, I think one of the words that comes to mind when I well, there are many words that come to mind when I think of like Black Ocean aesthetic, but just kind of riffing off what Carrie's talking about is this, so that some of you probably know, like the Russian dude Viktor Shklovsky's idea of defamiliarization. That feels like a kind of core part of the aesthetic. Poems and art that make us see the same thing, but in a whole new way, to make, what did he say, to make the stone stony again. I feel that comes through. So yeah. I'll pass it.
Yeah, this is a hard question because it involves like understanding yourself. But so I'll defer to someone who I think has much more self-awareness than me, which is I was on a radio show. It was like an actual radio show back like 10 years ago with Brandon Shimoda, and the host was like, "So what defines the Black Ocean aesthetic?" And I just didn't say anything. But and then Brandon said, "Well," and he took a beat. He's like, "Darkness." And that may not be true, but I liked it. Because there's like I do think there's a certain kind of concentration, right, to the poems, and but tonally, even if they're like limber, they're tap dancing over the abyss, So.
It is a Black Ocean.
Yeah, it is a Black Ocean. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing this and for bringing your darkness to another very dark place, which is New Orleans. We love darkness here. All right, well, let's give them another round of applause before we give it to